Welcome to The Edge, the podcast where we talk about everything leadership and teams. I'm Jenny Miller. I'm one of the directors at Management Dynamics, a small but mighty consultancy where we do work around leadership and teams.
And I'm Alison Grieve, the other half of Management Dynamics, and it's fantastic to be here today to talk to you all.
Thank you. And today we thought we'd talk about celebrating successes and how important that is in teams. Why is that so important, Ali?
I think it's really important because so many people tell us that they don't do it enough. They don't get the recognition, the feedback. And I think it's more than just the pat on the back, though. I think there's so much more to celebrating the successes that goes much deeper into understanding what's worked, what you can do differently for a learning, engagement, inspiring and motivating process if done well too. So I think it'd be good for us, Jenny, just to explore the different ways that, we can add real value to individuals and teams and the organization by talking about successes.
And why is this so important in a team? Why isn't it just, shouldn't the leader just do it?
Well, the leader can just do it, but I guess there's two things. One is if it's just the leader talking one-on-one with somebody, then, if you respect the leader, then yeah, that can be really nice feedback and off you go. But I think there's something very inspiring to see other members of your team being recognized for work well done or effort put in or a special achievement or learning or whatever, overcoming some kind of hardship. So I think there's a learning opportunity for everybody else. And I think as a team, if you want to create a really team spirit, then teams can recognize each other. They don't have to wait for the leader. Why has it got to be the leader who does everything? I mean, why can't it be your colleagues and peers and the people you work with on a day-to-day basis who recognize you? And surely that contributes much more and feeds the soul of people much better if you know you're recognized by everybody.
I think that's the bit for me, is that sense of belonging we can create when we hear from our colleagues, Jenny, you've done a great job, or Alison, you've done a great job, thank you. How that brings people together. Yeah. Rather than, and that's what a team's all about ultimately, isn't it? It's literally bringing people together and making them more interdependent on each other. And when you have interdependence, you need to create appreciation. Yeah, yes. To solidify that interdependence and to make that really work and to improve it as well. Because when we appreciate each other, we're appreciating the bits we like, and hopefully then people are more likely to repeat them in the future.
Exactly.
If we don't say anything, we're leaving it to chance that they might not.
Well, it's that old thing that no news must mean good news, but does it? Yeah. It just leaves a vacuum, doesn't it? And so I think it's important that somehow we do have teams also feeling ownership, that they can appreciate each other and they can celebrate the successes. And then you're much more likely to encourage more of that kind of behavior going forward, that people will notice what's going on, will want to support and help each other as a result of it.
The other thing I notice is how absent this is from most teams. Like most teams I work with are really action orientated, maybe if not most, all of them, very action orientated, very results driven, high results focused teams. And the danger with that is that they deliver something, they achieve something, and then they're on to the next thing. Yeah. Because there's more to be had, and they love that feeling of delivering more. But the big problem with that, of course, is that it can be, you can forget that actually to take a moment, and it doesn't take much, it just takes a moment just to pause and reflect and to think about what was it that made that a success, and how did we work together that made that successful, and how can we repeat that in the future?
Yeah. There's something really important about having that space, or maybe it's even a form of oxygen, into the team, so that you can breathe and, have that step back for a moment to say, what is it that we're really celebrating here, and what's successful, what enabled us to achieve this. And so from that, isn't that great that we could all do this together, and that sense of celebration and being in the moment? And that energizes a team. And from there, you're then in a much better place. Say, so what are we going to do with this next time? And build on it for the future.
Yeah.
And I also noticed that teams don't take space and time for anything. And this is a way to make very meaningful use, because I think they're worried about losing time because they're very busy. But I think this is a very meaningful way to use a short piece of time to re-energize and provide everybody with that oxygen and focus and space, just to be in the moment, but also with that future focus of more motivation, more collaboration, more bonded together.
Yeah. And it could be, end of a project that you've just delivered successfully or otherwise, right? That you just do a quick review of the project, but making sure that that review is balanced. So not only focusing on what didn't work and what you'd change if you did that again next time, but you're also focusing on what did work and that you want to keep and continue doing next time. Because then that creates this opportunity to maximize the chances that you'll repeat the good stuff and you'll overcome the not so good stuff.
Yeah. And also you inform other people who might not be part of the team and therefore who might not have realized all the things that you did that worked well. So I think the assumption of, let's just talk about what we'll improve next time, to your point, isn't balanced, but also it loses the opportunity to educate, reaffirm the kind of best practices you want to keep using and build on for next time.
I mean, I say, be balanced, and a lot of teams don't even do the review what didn't go so well. So, I think it's just the practice. Practice of just moving on to the next thing, and before they know that they're knees deep in that anyway. So just this idea of not just celebrating success, but also just reviewing things and checking in on how did that go. And to add an even greater layer to this would be, what were the dynamics like between us as a team as we delivered that? That's the real icing on the cake bit. Yeah. And that's when you really get to high performance, when you start looking at that regularly. Yeah.
And I think that reflecting back is a really important thing, because when you stop, and I mean, I've seen this when, coaching people on one-on-one or even teams, and you force them to just look back and say, what progress have we made so far since, we've been working since June, for example. And then they start to talk about what's changed, and individuals can do that. And so I think there's this reflective moment of, oh my, who would have thought we'd have done all of this? And that in itself, I think, is really big. Because suddenly what was in the day to day and the push and seemed quite hard, and they might not have noticed how much they've shifted and changed until they look back. And then you can say, okay, so what's going to be possible next?
Yeah, that idea of look how far we've come, I think is a really powerful one in teams. And often you're right, the day-to-day gets in the way, and we're so into where we are now that we forget to look back and notice that it's quite a distance from where where we've come from. Yeah. And so that sense of significant progress, that idea of look how far we've come, is a really important one in teams. And in order to create that, that's that sense of progress, you need to have a routine around it. Yeah. So there's something about, every time you finish a project, doing the review. Some people call it a retro or retrospective, or stop, start, continue, whatever it might be, some kind of process where you just very simply ask a few questions about what worked and what didn't, and what you would keep and what you would change the next time you did it, having some element of not just looking back, but looking forward as well. Yeah. So, if we were to do this again, when we do this again, what will we do deliberately? That's really powerful stuff.
It is so powerful. Yeah. And it's sort of talking about, even when things didn't go quite to plan, the fact that you review and you say, so that was interesting. And what's really been good about that is now we know, and now we can know how to do things differently. And so I think there's much more of an appreciative thinking or mindset when you're reflecting back, to take a more experimental look at the stuff that didn't quite end up as you wanted, but then think, well, how are we going to use that information? Because wasn't that good that we've learned that? Because that's how we can change things. Whereas if you didn't have the reflection, you might just do it again.
Well, the other thing is that not everybody might have been involved in the project. And so, there's something there about that reflection process that helps them to learn too about where the best practices were, what they should be stealing with pride from your experience as a sub team. What they can learn from in terms of things to avoid for where you made mistakes and they don't want to repeat them. All of this is important stuff to not only keep within the project team, but to take wider to your, wider team as well.
And I don't think you need to just use this reflective practice or retros on projects. I think you can do it on, on work colleagues and teams who are working on, the same kind of thing all the time. It's just your job, and you might have many projects within that. But I think, there's really important things that we can look at as we're looking back across a year or a month or half a year or a day or whatever time frame you want, to say, how far have we come? What have we actually achieved this year? And that could also include what obstacles have we overcome? Because sometimes if you're just looking at what have we achieved, might not be that much, because there were some huge projects or activities or obstacles to overcome. And recognizing that you have, overcome those things, I think is a significant thing too.
Or are on the way to overcoming them, even if you're not quite there yet. Something about just acknowledging progress. Which actually leads us to another important principle around celebrating success, which is this idea of the small wins, celebrating not just the big, which is kind of what we've been talking about so far, is the big stuff, the end of the project, the achievement of a KPI, whatever it might be, the end of the year. And that's really important to do that. And not enough teams do it. 90% of teams don't. So having routines around that is so, so important. However, it's also really, really important to celebrate the little wins, the progress to the big goal. The overcoming an obstacle that felt a little bit hard and may not necessarily be mentioned otherwise, but should be acknowledged in some small way. Because it's one step towards getting to your overall objective. So that's a really powerful principle. Is that you've got a book in your bookshelf around this one, haven't you? And I think it's called the Progress Principle.
I do. I just happen to have it here for anybody who wants to see it. So the Progress Principle. And it talks about just small things, and small things add up to bigger things. And, over time we can cope with doing small stuff. In terms of chunking our work down, or chunking the challenges down into bite-sized chunks, really, so that we can then achieve it. And it's when you look back, you can go, oh, look how much progress we've made. And it works for personal stuff as much as, the tasks that we've got. And I think it's a really nice thing for teams to look at as a team. I think it can help build the team cohesion when teams start to feel ownership for how they've progressed as a team.
We do a little thing weekly. One of our routines is, we've got 2 weekly meetings, one on a Monday morning where we all get together and we kind of connect and we talk about the week ahead. And then probably one of the most important aspects of that, which is not about celebrating success, it's just being human, is just talking about our weekends, what we got up to. And I love it. I love those moments. It's like 10, 15 minutes of our meeting, our hour-long meeting. But we never, never, ever get rid of that. Over my dead body do we get rid of that?
No matter how much I can feel myself like, let's get on with it, it's like, no, I want to be nosy and hear what everybody's doing, because I think there's something that connects you at a much deeper level with what people are doing in their lives, what they enjoy doing, where their pleasure comes from, and also some of the challenges they've got as well. So, you know, and what they're doing there. So it just makes people human. I love that bit of our meeting too, Jenny. And it really doesn't take any time at all. I think it's worth more than the 15 minutes. You know, if you were to say, what's the return on that 15 minutes?
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's much more than when we start to talk about workload next. I mean, I think we get more bang for our buck with that 15 minutes investment.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
It's
like
really
the
nice.
Friday too.
Well, the other bit we do on the Monday, of course, is talk about the week ahead, and we talk about what our week's like. You know, at a really high level, we red, amber, green it. We say, you know, whether if we're feeling red, it's like, don't give me anything else. I'm absolutely full. Amber is I'm getting close, but it's, you know, I've still got some space, and green is I'm pretty good. Like, you know, I've got a lot of capacity. I could be helping a lot of other people. And then we ask people what support they would need from others in the team, and that's a really important conversation that enables collaboration, the sense of you're not alone. If, you know, it's particularly when people are red, that's when they should be asking for support. And people willingly give it, don't they? That's what my experience is of the team.
I think that's so nice. Everybody's like, it's okay, we'll chip
what
in.
can we take off you, basically, and how can we support, even if it's just moral support, because you have to do it by yourself. And then the Friday bit, which I think is the bit that links to this celebrating success, is when we look at the week that's gone. And when each person gives a highlight of the week, and you're not allowed to, you know, if two people have been part of the same thing and it was really awesome, you can't repeat it. So we fight to get who can get in first with the team meeting that we've just had in person or something.
I know, people have been working together, then there's a fight for who gets to say it first. Because that's what often it comes out of that highlight of the week, is when people have been collaborating much more than, you know, and we would never have known how powerful it is, the collaboration, the impact that has on people's sense of achievement and what's made it for them that week. But it really is, you know, every time if groups have been together working on something, that's what they mention. That's what we
did discover the other day that basically the whole team, apart from me, are a bunch of extroverts. So that might be part of it. And you're slowly dragging me into your extroverted ways.
But I have heard you, Jenny, as well, mention how much you've really enjoyed.
It's true. It's often the way that, you know, I mentioned I think it was into last week. I was like, because I saw you, Ali. Because I saw you. That was my highlight of the week.
But I think there's something there that recognises teams and the power and synergy of teams. And, you know, we talk about the multiplier effect. I think that that's what people are really alluding to when they say the highlight for me was when we all got together, or I was working with, you know, Jenny on this, and it's because you suddenly feel that power through and the energy and that, you know, the 1 + 1 is more than 2 kind of feeling, which is what we're after with team working and high performing teams. And so I think that's what we're trying to get to. And that's when people talk about their highlight of the week and they mention that's what it is. But also it helps us understand what motivates people, because they tell you every week.
Absolutely. Yeah, they do. And ultimately they are also celebrating a success, and they're often little wins, aren't they, or little moments that when they felt good in the team, and that is a success in itself, right? Every time you feel good about something, you know, it's important to acknowledge it. Yeah
Exactly. And I've some teams, when we're suggesting sharing our best practices, is get them to talk about, you know, a success story more generally, with a bit more time than our 20 minutes or whatever on a Friday, but get every team member to share a success story that they've got in the recent time frame, and then everybody else to listen to it and to come up with what strengths they hear about that person. And then when the person's finished telling the story, then the rest of the team say to them, you know, this is what I've heard as you told that story, that you're really strong at this and you're talented at that and you're experienced in this area. And everybody takes part. And that really reaffirms for the individual who was sharing their success story that they've won, they've been heard. But two, everybody in the team has really listened because they've been looking for that, and then they've noticed what the strengths are. And I think it is such a powerful exercise. Really powerful.
It really
Wonderful.
is. I've run it quite a few times with a lot of teams, and it's well, the first thing I notice is how many people still struggle with appreciative feedback, because this is what this is appreciative feedback. People get uncomfortable with it, right? And so there's a little bit of a setup that's needed in terms of how do you receive feedback. And that is to just say thank you. You don't sit there and go, oh, it wasn't me, I wasn't so and so they deserve all the praise, because you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable about being in the spotlight. It's just like, oh, thank you. That's all you're allowed to say. So that's quite nice. And I think the lovely thing about this exercise is that it helps the team to develop a feedback culture that a lot of teams want to have, but think that you go from 0 to 100 on feedback. And when they say they want a feedback culture, they want the good and the bad. They want the positive feedback, the appreciative feedback, but also more constructive feedback. And constructive feedback, you need a lot of trust to be able to give people constructive feedback. So you need to edge towards something. So this exercise actually is really, really lovely for literally edging towards it and noticing how uncomfortable people can still feel, even if it's just appreciative, not constructive feedback. So,
well, most of us are not used to getting lots of compliments, because that is in a sense what it is, isn't it? Which is, lots of people saying lovely things about you, but it's a real heartwarming thing, and it really shows people how they're being seen by the team. I think the other thing it does for the team, though, is one, it creates that kind of appreciative feedback environment, but it also means people start to learn more about each other, and they start to learn who's got skills and experience in different areas. And so if you need help or you want to get somebody's advice, you start to learn who to go to. And so there are definitely other reasons to do this, not just to have a nice happy clappy session. It actually has a much deeper way of building the roots and embedding that team together.
Definitely. I totally agree with that. I think it's a really powerful exercise and a lovely celebration of each other. So we're talking about celebrating successes. You can also celebrate with each other, and using this tool can be, just really powerful for that. Yeah.
So nice.
And that's another example of bringing people together with this kind of making people more connected, feel a sense of belonging, feeling seen. Do not underestimate or overestimate the power of just feeling seen and how much trust that can build in a team. So just by saying, Ali, I really appreciate your strength in your I'm going to do a real piece of appreciation now, Ali. This is not just made up. Your lovely ideas that you have, and I can always come to you to make something better. Yeah. For example, how good does that feel?
That feels lovely. It's made my day. That's the second bit of feedback today, which has made my day.
What was the other bit of feedback?
The other bit of feedback was from a client who sent us a lovely message saying how wonderful you and I were the other day, and that 1 and 1 does make more than 2. And that was just really nice, because that's what we were trying to show, which was actually for that particular thing, it would be better if there was both of us working on it, and they got the benefits. So that's 2 bits. Thank you, Jenny.
You're welcome. I can add to your feedback pile for the week. But it's also so easy not to do that. I mean, that client took the time to write that email, and we both went, oh, that's so lovely. And it's like, and it can be very easy for people to think that and go, that was a really awesome session, and not actually to then, not because they don't value it or value it any less. It's just because they're busy and they move on to the next thing. But the impact that can have on people, especially in your team, can be so, so powerful. Yeah.
So we've talked about some of the smaller kinds of celebrating success with and learning from it and everything. There's also more of the sort of loud stuff, like going out and celebrating with a dinner or a party, or sort of events kind of things. And I think those can all really be good fun and can work well. However, you do need to be careful because not everybody likes the same sorts of things. And so trying to find an inclusive way so that, people are really happy about it, and want to, be recognized in that way and to celebrate together that way. I think it's important to get everybody's views on what's an appropriate way for them to be included.
I think that's really, really important, actually. I think a lot of teams will default to going to the pub or whatever, With us, it's eating food, isn't it? Always.
Always. It has to be good food.
Good food.
Like a nice vibe, good food.
Yeah. But that was fine when it was just the two of us. But now we do have to pay more attention to everybody else in the team or how they would want to celebrate. In fact, we're doing some celebrations next week, aren't we?
We are doing celebrations next week. Yeah. And I'm really intrigued because the team have come up with an activity that we're all going to go and do.
I'm really excited about this activity.
Me too. I'm like, what
disproportionately excited. Yeah. Because we basically tasked the team with deciding what they wanted to do, didn't we?
Yeah. So we're going to go and make a silver ring. Who knew how to do that? Well, I have no idea. We'll have to talk about it in a later podcast. But apparently we bash and hammer and
it sounds awesome.
Yeah, melt it. I don't know what else you do with this.
But I love the symbology of this as well. Like rings are eternal, and there's a sense of circular and
infinity and connected. Yeah. I know, it's lovely. Yeah.
So I do expect us all, I might change my mind next Tuesday, but to wear our rings for life. That's it.
Well, I was thinking there could be different ways to wear it, So could be, earrings, you could put it on a chain, you could wear it on your hands, obviously.
Yeah.
But you could make, at the moment, bag charms are all the rage. So you could have it on your back.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So we could, I have no idea what this thing's going to look like.
Yes. So but that was celebration of a big milestone for us, wasn't it? Yeah. So there was something really important for us to bring everybody together to really appreciate, but also, create this sense of we did this together, and there needed to be a real kind of a marking of that as an occasion. Yeah. And yes, it's 2 months since the milestone passed, but we got there eventually because it took ages to get us all together.
Yeah. But I think that's okay too, because when it's huge milestones, because there's something about the timeliness, isn't it? Yeah. But when they're really big milestones, I think what's important is that we've then had the anticipation of what we're going to do. Yeah. And then now we're going to go and do it. And so I think it's going to be really great fun. I think we're all really excited about it. Whereas other celebrations of success, I think, do need to be a bit close. If they're smaller ones, there's something about the size,
the progress principle,
and the
would say,
yeah.
Celebrate it as soon as you notice that it's happened. Yeah, and when we start talking celebration, we don't mean going to a ring making course, but it could just be noticing it and talking about it. That's what we mean by celebrations. It could just be, oh, by the way, I've had a really good week because this happened.
Yes,
I got a note from a client. Celebrate that. Don't just keep it to yourself. Share it with everybody, because that's when you really light up your neurology and your motivation for continuing that success with the next one.
Yes, that's so true. And we love nothing more than celebrations. I think it's part of our human makeup, isn't it? Yeah. And so why do teams not do it much more on a day-to-day basis? Because we need it. It's, we do family celebrations and, we do things with our kids to celebrate what they're doing and our friends. So why do teams not do much more on a day-to-day basis? I think it's really important. And I also think it, going back to the other point we said earlier, Jenny, it's not about the leader doing it. It's about the team. And sometimes the leader might not know that there's something to celebrate. And so therefore the team needs to go, boy, we're celebrating this. And then the leader can join in, because then they'll find out.
To start with a lot of teams, I think the leader needs to role model it. and to create an environment where they have permission to do so.
Yes.
You know, and might need to ask the questions, and might need to prompt, probably not might, will need to prompt, and encourage that culture where we celebrate success here. You know, we party hard when we do a great job, and we have the conversation when the little things happen. And, you know, and this is not just a once a year thing. It's a continuous thing we do all the time. So I think that there's something there about, maybe to start with, the leader over indexing on it, and then gradually the team will take over. And I think we're starting to see that in our team, aren't we, where it's not just us that brings it up. I think the team are now taking that accountability on themselves as well.
Yeah. And that's when you know that it's getting more cohesive, and there's more trust, and there's more sharing and learning, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then, you know, and ultimately, you know, our aim as leaders is to make ourselves redundant. I mean, we hopefully never will be, but the idea of the team being able to do this stuff, this lead team dynamic stuff without us. So even if we are absent, I mean, but before we start this conversation, you told me you're going on yet another holiday next year, Ali, for 2 weeks. I'm counting 3 so far.
It is 3. It is 3.
Before the end of April. So in your absence, the team needs to be able to do this without you.
Yeah. I guess I'm just going to use up a lot of my holiday early on in the year. I know I'll have more holiday.
Of course you will.
But I think, you know, I can do that now, of course, because the team are much more competent.
And that's the point, isn't it?
And
so
capable,
it does free us up to be able to do other things.
Yeah. I can go on more trips.
Yeah.
And then come back and celebrate how amazing they are and how empowered, because then they're learning from each other too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that brings us to the end of this podcast. We've talked about lots of things in relation to celebrating success and achievements, and appreciating those moments of success and achievement as a team, as a group of people who work together on stuff and get things done. We've talked about the progress principles, this idea of the little wins being really, really important along the way, as well as celebrating the big stuff. And hopefully giving you some ideas as to how you can do this with your own team as well.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us.
Feel free to share them back.
Yeah, we'd love to hear what your ways of celebrating success are. We've got a few ideas here, but they're not exhaustive by any means. So please do share them with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And thank you for joining us. See you again soon.
Thank you.